I am not sure if I am live, so I'm going to wait for this little thingy to stop spinning. Oh, I think I'm live. Hello, everybody. It's Leslie Tagorda here, your brand astrologer and designer. Um, and I know that we have, well, you know that we have a Mercury retrograde coming, and there is a lot of anxiety I can feel, because traditionally, we've been scared. Um, hey, Adriana, we've been scared, poopless about Mercury retrograde, right? Like the sky is falling. But I wanted to kind of give some insight as to, what you can do and what you can't do, and how to really kind of optimize this time, specifically looking at whether to launch or not, right? I'm going to be doing again a big workshop next Monday on a Mercury retrograde survival, crossing off the survival revival guide, because if you really know how to use this energy, it's actually an amazing time. And so I'm here to empower you to be able to use non-judgmental terms about Mercury retrograde. So I know there's like Giselle and Melissa and Grace and Adriana, you guys are all wondering, like, do I launch now or not, right? So I know that there's a lot of astrologers that say do not launch. And let's talk about the reason why. When Mercury retrograde, when Mercury is going retrograde, all it means is that it's slowing down. Mercury is our thought processes. Mercury is our ability to communicate and to understand information, so the information coming in, as well as to communicate information, the information going out, right? And so when it goes retrograde, the processes are a little bit, they're not a little bit, they are backwards, right? And so you hear about during Mercury retrogrades all the things that can go wrong, right? We got the tech glitches, we get miscommunications, we there's feelings that get hurt. There's all kinds of like little things about Mercury retrograde that, people, hold on to. And yes, all of these little things can definitely happen during Mercury retrograde. But now, do we launch or do we not launch? So, Adriana, you said something that was like super, super important that I want us to all really reconsider here. And that is trusting our gut, right? So, yes, the cosmos is working, and we can choose to work within the energies or we can choose to work against the energies. Now, that doesn't mean that just because during a Mercury retrograde, we have to like just say stop and not do anything, because, like, well, the world still goes on. We still need to be productive, but productivity looks a little bit different during a Mercury retrograde. Now, Mercury retrograde happens 3 times a year. It lasts about 3 weeks. So this is like the perfect time to just like reevaluate things, right? Now, with Mercury in retrograde, going over Cancer, Cancer is one of our emotional signs, a place where we need to feel and intuit and reflect, right? In our businesses, it's also the place where we need to create safe communities, where we need to create safe spaces. Because if we think about the Cancer ideal is to hold space, to create emotional security so that transformation, healing can happen, right? And I know that all of us in business here, we are helping our customers transform something, right? And the first step of being able to transform is feeling safe enough to transform. And that's what Cancer is about. So, going back to, do I launch or do I not launch, right? Now, the ideal aspect is to not launch, right? But we know, like Grace was saying, I got to make money or I can't not launch right now. I get it, right? So if you have to launch during this time, because miscommunications can happen, what you need to do in order is to just make space for mistakes to happen, right? Pad your timing a little bit. Be extra cautious when looking at signed contracts, when looking at your content, when agreeing with people. And because we're in Cancer, this is about really connecting to our intuition in terms of understanding things. This is not the logical mind working in Mercury retrograde, right? Logical mind is like going berserk during a Mercury retrograde. It's going backwards. All of the inputs and the outputs that normally go direct are now going backwards. So instead of trying to figure things out by pure mind and sheer will, you figure things out by reconnecting to your body, reconnecting to your feelings, reconnecting to your intuition to find out what needs to come up in terms of like transmuting that I know this is getting really woo but transmuting the understandings, all of those repressed feelings that need to come up, yes, in your business. Who's here with me so far? Are there comments going on here? I know, like you're like, well, we're still talking about business. So the question, like, if Adriana, do I trust my gut? How can I use the cosmos to live my life in these tricky situations? Otherwise, it seems like, well, we just have to always be putting on the brakes. No, we use the time to get curious, to lead with curiosity, right? So with Grace and with Giselle and with Melissa, I'm just looking here, like, do I launch something brand new? Well, it is not the optimal time to launch something brand new because if we think about the Mercury retrograde concepts of things are going to take a little bit longer, there's going to be more misunderstandings, there's going to be more tech glitches, right? So when you're launching something brand new, there like it's already prone to having so many mistakes, and then so with Mercury retrograde, the mistakes get amplified. Now, if you go into launching something new knowing all of these things and you build space to allow for these mistakes to happen, can you have a successful launch? Yeah, maybe. Right? Now, other things are deciding factors as well, right? We have to look at our own personal charts. We have to look at whether or not you have a natal Mercury retrograde. There's a lot of people that have natal Mercury retrogrades, right? Because if Mercury retrograde is going, if there is a Mercury retrograde 9 weeks out of the 52 weeks a year, there's a lot of us born with Mercury retrograde. So during Mercury retrograde cycles, you're in your natural state if you have Mercury retrograde. And so Adriana says, I'm launching my beta with the Gemini new moon. Yes, it was lit, right? Using maybe a beta, or let me go back to these questions here because they were so great. So Melissa was saying, I was planning on starting my program this week, but because of the Black Lives movement had the full attention for the last 2 weeks, so she's pushed it back. What are her thoughts? Now, if you want to get your marketing started, what I would suggest, and again, tune in to see if this feels right for you, because like astrology is not like do it this way. It really matters like how you are going to play your cards, right? So feel into it. I would recommend starting your launch before Mercury actually goes retrograde. It stops and stations on the 18th. You don't really want to be doing anything on the 17th. That day is going to feel really tight. It's going to feel really compressed. So if you start before, you'll have this long, like 3 week runway before then you can then maybe start the program afterwards. And like we were saying, this is that 3 week runway is really great to kind of do the healing work. Is there any pre work that you want your people to do that kind of reassesses their internal landscape, right? Because Cancer is about emotional security. So, how can you prepare your customers for their journey with reviewing and relaxing and reintegrating anything that has to do with RE? But then with the Cancer themes, this is about, again, emotional security and to hold space to nurture, right? I'll be talking a lot more about this in my workshop, in the podcast, about kind of house by house. Like, again, where Mercury retrograde falls in your personal natal chart gives you an indication at least at what needs to be reviewed in your business and in your life. Um, Patricia said, I review what isn't working and relaunch. Yeah. So during a Mercury retrograde, it is perfect to refine and review and perfect things. Doing a relaunch during a Mercury retrograde? Yeah, totally okay, because the launch had happened. You're continuing a launch of something that started before. And Adriana, yes, my gut and astrology are on the same page. Now, this summer is kind of a tricky time for launching brand new things because collectively we are in a place of much needed healing, right? The revolution has started, right? I talked a little bit about the astrology of a revolution for all of the big shifts that, happen at regular bases, but like now have all compacted during 2020. And this middle pivot point of the summer is this really a big time for healing. I was noticing that Amy Miyamoto, one of my mentors and lovely astrology friends, she posted something about all of these Cancerian themes. So the United States is a Cancer, was born under the Cancer sign, and the lowest vibrations of Cancer are about not belonging, about kind of like clan with a C. Like, this is my family and I'm only going to protect my family and everybody else doesn't belong, right? That's the lowest expression of Cancer. But at the highest expression of Cancer, we have creating safe spaces and safe communities for everybody, inclusion, right? So we have these social justice themes that are getting played out right now in our country. So to imagine of, the Black Lives Movement is not going anywhere. It has just begun. So if you're launching really anything right now, to understand how that fits into the greater movement, again, emotional security, creating safe and inclusive spaces so that we can hold space and create space for transformation to happen. Because transformation is going to happen, but true evolved transformation only can happen when we feel safe, when we are choosing to make this next evolution, right? Oh, hello, Suzanne. Good to see you. So I don't know, did I answer your question satisfactorily about launching during a Mercury retrograde? What questions do you guys have? And I'll go through my notes here. Um, yeah, I think I covered it. Um, so let me just go back through here. Giselle says, I'm following because I have a similar situation. My program is starting July 21st, but my entire selling period is during Mercury retrograde. So Giselle, again, I would suggest maybe starting your promo time, this week before the 17th, so that you have this really long runway, and pad a lot of time during that runway, during Mercury retrograde, about why this is so important to social change, why this is so important in building and re-examining all of these repressed feelings that need to come up, right? Like total Cancerian themes. Um, yes, so Patricia asks, are the stations direct more intense? 100% yes, because station retrograde and station direct. So in the retrograde season, we are currently in the shadow zone, meaning Mercury is going to be retracing the steps backwards. It's going to be crossing over the zodiac degrees as it goes backwards. And just like a car, when you put a car in reverse, you can't just go from going and heading in, like going direct and then heading into reverse. You have to come to a stop, right? So the station, when people say station, this is the stop. This is the putting the brakes on before we go in a new direction. And so the time period around the actual stops are definitely the most intense. That's why even though Mercury retrogrades Mercury goes retrograde on June 18th, we're going to feel it on the 17th, because this is when the brakes are hitting, right? Where, I mean, the brakes have already started, but this is where we'll feel the biggest stop, right? So again, even when we go back forward, you know, when we station direct is when Mercury stops going in reverse and then goes forward. Though that time right around the stationing, the stop is also felt most intensely. So, any more questions about launching? Because I know that that's a really big one, and I can answer more questions. Of course, if you want to join the Mercury Retrograde Revival Guide, I'm going to be talking about, you know, the schedule of Mercury Retrograde, what not to do, what to do, and like, because there is a schedule, there's different phases of the Mercury Retrograde, that there's certain questions that you want to consider during that time. I'll also be going by house. So if you know how to read your natal chart, looking at where 5 degrees Cancer and between 5 degrees and 17 degrees of Cancer, where that is in your chart, is what needs to be re-examined in your life and business. So I'll be going house by house over that for entrepreneurs, so we can look at kind of what needs to be refined in our businesses. And then, of course, if there is time, I will be doing some speed readings and looking at people's charts and seeing if there's any planets or energies that are getting activated that, you know, add a little bit of energy and specification. And of course, answering your questions. Melissa says, I have a webinar planned for the 17th. Oof. That is a hard one, okay? Because 17th is the day that right before Mercury stops and goes backwards. So how do you make the most of that? Yes, leave a lot of extra time for possible tech glitches. Have a plan B, have a plan C, because it's a wild card, right? Um, and be really connected to your intuition, what your intuition is telling you, and your feelings, because this can be a time of communication, so of miscommunications, and specifically miscommunications about how we assume people are feeling, or how people assume we are feeling, right? Getting misunderstood from this very emotional level. So, being very clear in your webinar about what this is, what your intention is, and being clear about, if you make mistakes, what does that mean? Right? How will you take responsibility? This is definitely a time where feelings will be raw. There will be lots of time to have these miscommunications. And so, how do you plan for that, right? Um, again, trust your gut, and just have a lot of plan A, plan B, plan C, back up all of your slides and everything, have multiple copies. A lot, it's kind of a wild card. There's so many things that could happen. Gratefully, not a lot of us are traveling right now, because traffic builds up during Mercury retrogrades, like short distance travel. I remember the last Mercury retrograde in Cancer. We actually had one this time last year, also in Cancer. So these themes, like, we have to reassess our feelings, right? All of these things are coming up for us. And last year when this happened, I was in Hawaii. I was visiting home, but I was in a hotel, and the hotel flooded. The alarm system went off, the electrical system got messed up, and they couldn't turn off the sprinklers at the very top floor. And the whole top down, the whole hotel flooded. It was I laughed. Gratefully, nobody was hurt. None of our property was damaged, except for obviously the hotel was damaged. But those are the kinds of things that can happen during a Mercury retrograde. All right, people. Drop me a message if you have more questions. I'll drop a link for the workshop. It is a pay what you can. There will be a replay. There will be some really specific questions to ask yourself, and how to really specify what Mercury wants you to know based on your natal chart. Yeah, sounds like being prepared to share my slides and a recording ready just in case. 100%. Hey, Brandon, aloha. Just talking about some woo woo things and entrepreneurship. So, I hope all of you guys see that, astrology, and especially astrology for entrepreneurs, is meant to be an empowering tool for reaching our potential. You're so welcome, Melissa. All right, I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.